Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a real pleasure to be with you. So the question is the creative bureaucracy. Why, what, and how? Well, everybody is now looking, and they were doing before, what their places are like, and Laska already described some of the things we need to do. But I think we also recognize that we are in the midst of a systemic crisis where a business as usual approach will not get us to where we need to be. Our way of life and economic order is materially expansive, socially divisive, and environmentally hostile. So somehow we need to heal that in one way or another. So there have been massive changes, but even before the pandemic and before Ukraine, there were big issues, climate issues, etc., that we needed to deal with. And so when we think of what shifts a system, it's often a crisis because it makes you rethink, but it can also be a concept like sustainability, resilience, gender equality. These things can shift the way we think, plan, and act. And then, like the EU, which has this idea of mission-oriented development, you have a mission that you want to achieve, but also principles shift systems. Frederick earlier talked about we need to safeguard democracy that has principles within it, but also sometimes a mood, the idea of placemaking as a new mood, a new way of looking at things, or the 15-minute city. But there's a trajectory of public administration or bureaucracy. Max Weber, the iron cage, very hierarchical. Then came new public management. We will learn everything from the private sector. Then came the idea of partnerships, connecting different stakeholders, new public governance. Then people talked about new public service, that you're in the service of the citizen. And finally, the idea of open governance. Now, within all of that, the creative bureaucracy fits. And over the last 25 years, there's been a slow movement in the making. In Amsterdam, there was the Digitale Stad already in 1993, Place Lab in MIT, Mind Lab, Vinnova, Citra are national innovation agencies in the Nordic cities, Forum Virium in Helsinki, the Living Labs movement, and many others, including the Office of Public Sector Innovation in the OECD. So there has been this movement in the making, within which the issue that Anna will talk about later is part of. This was the first event that we had. We all had our blue scarves and were, I think, smiling. But the big issue now is that we all need to wake up, not only Ukraine, we all need to wake up for many, many, many reasons. And a friend of mine does public art every 2 weeks in my nearby town, and he changed lockdown to luckdown. But I would prefer to see if in the crisis there is an opportunity of that luckdown when our luck is down. And what we realize is the hubris that we had in the way we organized our life has been shaken, and which caused us to rethink. We recognize too that the civilization we're in is like a thin film of order we build around the chaos of events. And so when we look to the future, what we know and see is it's very fragile. And in some respects, it's 1 minute to midnight. In other words, there is an urgency. So we all need a plan B. And many in the audience and people here organizing this event know that there needs to be a plan B of some sort. And this is a picture of an event called We Make the City in Amsterdam. It happens every year. And you can see the words there: a better city for all of us, the circular economy, the vibrant city, the inclusive city, the healthy city, etc., etc. these are all big challenges that are difficult to implement. We can talk about it, but as Frederick will show us later, you need to walk the talk. It's not only about talking. And then there is the big breakthrough, which is the digital breakthrough, which has great possibilities, but requires us to communicate and makes us communicate differently. But it also makes the world a smaller place. And as we know, because we've been living in this virtual world for 2 years, but in that, in terms of the public administration, we need to find a good handshake to use these systems and possibilities well. But we also know there are dangers about data. We can't hide from the data. So there is good and bad things about all of this. So the idea of the creative bureaucracy was a call, a trumpet call to think afresh, to unleash the talent that exists in bureaucracies and to connect better and to attract new younger people to want to work for the public good. Now, of course, the bureaucracy is not everything, but without one, nothing much can work. I'm pleased that the traffic light, when it says red, is red and stop. And when it's green, it says go. So the main desire is to unleash the frozen middle. Often there is a good leader, but often there is a bad leader. But often these things get blocked in the middle. And often in the middle of a bureaucracy is great innovation. There was some research in Harvard about this, that many of the best ideas are coming from the middle of a bureaucracy. So typically we think when we use the word creative, it must be an artist. Sure, that's true, but there are creative scientists, creative businesses, creative social innovators, etc. And rarely do we think public administrators can be creative, but they're dealing with so many things: mobility, welfare, safety, SMEs, diversity, inclusion, children, etc., etc. So the critique, we know that there is this massive frustration, and particularly in some countries, I've been to Bulgaria about 10 times, and sometimes there's this very old-fashioned idea of the boss. I just tell you what to do, you just do it. Perhaps, I hope it's changed, by the way, Svetla. But anyway, there is that frustration because it infantilizes people working on the front line. Then systems are often too complicated, like spaghetti or red tape. And often there is this working in silos and not connecting the different things together. So Laska's work connects physical and activity and design and culture, all of that together. And then sometimes there are too many reports that just lie on the table. So the other issue is often because people want to work for the public good, it recruits these very bright people, but teaches them to conform. And so in their private life, they live this more agile other world. So the creative bureaucracy, towards a creative bureaucracy, I'll say some words about this. So it's about shifting the organizational culture and the culture of management. And it's about ideas of humble governance, where the leaders are more humble because they're harnessing everything within an organization. And the Finnish government is very a pioneer in this approach. But it also means that sometimes bureaucracies should think like a startup, more flexible, more agile. So we are trying to say that you're not alone, that there are unsung heroes in all organizations. And we want to build a better bureaucracy, but also create another type of bureaucracy, which is a different organizational type. So here some issues emerge. Often in a bureaucracy, is it doing it the right way, or is it doing the right thing? Or in other words, do we follow the letter of the law or regulation or the spirit? And because law is always behind, we have to follow the spirit. So often it's about a different culture rather than structure. In most structures, you can be more open-minded, as I'm suggesting. We also need to move beyond this very linear thinking, predict and provide, to more elastic planning, where you're strategically principled. You know what you want. You want to empower people or have sustainability. But to get there, you need to be tactically flexible. So in harnessing this collective intelligence, we can learn from others and see whether other organizational cultures do it better. And many of you in Bulgaria will have innovation departments, which are supposed to foster innovation. The question is, are they innovative themselves or old-fashioned? So when we have a vision, and you have many visions, the vision should shape the rules, not the rules shaping the vision. So the creative bureaucracy has two words: intention. And we did this on purpose. Creative sounds cool, bureaucracy sounds boring. But we want to go to the positive values that originally were part of a bureaucracy. So we all know that many good people, and they're in the audience, with positive values, good intentions, etc. They made choices to work as politicians or as officials in the public domain. But somehow, when they're working in these structures, the good ideas fade away as they go through the system. And the key characteristics of the new bureaucrat, the main one, of course, is being more open than closed, but having a mindset that knows when you're open and when you then have to close down, divergent, convergent. That bureaucrat needs to be foresight-focused and integrating the way they work, thinking about different disciplines, being emotionally intelligent, and have both. There's nothing against technical skills, but they need generic skills as well, like communication capacity, etc., etc. And finally, the working process needs to be collaborative. So we all know that you need to have routine and predictability. I'm not saying you throw everything up in the air every 5 minutes, but we also know that you need to balance the silo insight with the collaborative insights. And that often means working in a transdisciplinary way. So you might say, Frederick and Anna will say, what's a great road? Describe it. And then only you go to your discipline. And you find probably that we all share what is a great street and things like that. The three aims of the bureaucracy, as I said, is revaluing the public interest as a vocation, shifting the image of what a bureaucracy could be, and attracting the young to reshape the organization. The three pillars are rethinking the regulations and incentives for now, crucially, reshaping the inner life of a bureaucracy so that you can harness the potential so people can be the best they can be. We've done lots of research, and it's seen that the discretionary effort, i.e. that effort I give when it's 5 o'clock and Svetla says, can you help me? I say yes, but our research shows that that's minus 35%. People say, no, I've got to go home because the structure is so horrible. And the third big pillar is to create new links to the civic and business world. The three goals are obvious, to create a better life, to address the big issues that matter, the green transition, to make more livable places. So it does, this is a Russian piece of art, but it does mean shifting the way the incentives and regulations work. And of course, we recognize that it requires courage. And what it also means, what are we bringing with this courage that I believe many in your audience have? And here is just, I'm only going to give very small examples. Adelaide in South Australia had the 90-day project, where a citizen or a bureaucrat could look at a problem and say, it has to be solved in 90 days. And the premier of the state said, I like this idea. So that gave it legitimation. That's just one example of a creative bureaucracy response. The other is the urban commons movement that many of you, Lasco, will know from Bologna, where they made this declaration and decided with citizens and the city to share the management of park facilities and things like that. That's become a bit of a movement. Or Frederick will know this one, Restaurant Day in Helsinki. There were media-savvy people who said, let's open a restaurant, and it was forbidden. So they just said, let's one day open restaurants in the street. It was disallowed. But then the mayor said, but isn't this the vibrant, vital city we say we want in our vision? And the rules were changed. And Restaurant Day has spread as an idea and happens in various parts of the year. Even if you think of planning for the 15-minute city, you know that you have to change the rules, how they work. In our first festival, I'm sorry that I put the word fuck up there, but we had a fuck up night where the big challenge in Berlin was the 10-year delay in opening the airport. And the head of that described how that happened. Now, what was great about that is the honesty to say what the problem was and what needed to be done. So later on, Anna will talk about our festival, but we celebrate heroes and heroines. And here are 3 heroes and heroines. And anyway, this is just a young child, which is the future bureaucrat. It's actually the daughter of Annalisa Boni, who ran Eurocities. And so, yes, if we liberate things, I think we might be happy again. Thank you very much.